So today I want to make an ultimate battle between Batumi and Tbilisi. It's probably gonna be my last video about Georgia since I already moved from there 3 months ago. I lived in Tbilisi for 8 months and lived in Batumi for 4 months. So this is all my knowledge for you to use and to choose the right city for yourself. Well, first of all, Batumi is a coastal town region called Ajaria near the Black Sea, and it only has 150,000 population. Tbilisi, on the other hand, located on the east part of the country, and it's pretty far from the sea. It has population 1 million people, which is almost 10 times bigger, and of course it's the capital of Georgia. So let's start with the feeling, what did I feel when I lived in each city. I think Batumi is more laid back. It feels like a more relaxed town where you can just walk, enjoy your time, your mindfulness, I guess, and you can just walk around the area on the embankment, on the sea walk, which is really nice in Batumi. I think it's my favorite place in Batumi in general. And also it has, of course, the beach, the sea vine, and it's really nice. It also has a little bit of Turkish vibe because I guess it's pretty close to Turkish border, so there's some neighborhoods with the Turkish restaurants, like Turkish vibe in general. They even have a mosque there. Tbilisi, on the other hand, is more vibrant. There's always something happening in the city, especially in the city center and some areas where a lot of restaurants and bars and nightlife are. If you like this busyness, this vibration of the city, this is more for you. There's of course, much more people, much more cars, much more action in general and movement. And of course in Tbilisi you can find more social life, nightlife to enjoy, and if you're a digital nomad, there's of course more co-working spaces. I don't know any co-working spaces in Batumi, so probably they don't have ones. But also there's one big difference. Tbilisi is really hilly city, so you're constantly walking up and down on the hills, and Batumi is completely flat, so this is also contributes to the enjoyment of the chill vibe in Batumi. So because you can walk just relaxed, just walk a little bit, use scooter or something. In Tbilisi you constantly have to go up, down, and you can have your walk more relaxable, like in Batumi. In terms of accommodation, I think Batumi has more hotel style apartments. They call them apartments, but they feel like hotels, to be honest, especially in these new large tall buildings. Most of the apartments there feels hotel-y like. It's same vibe as a hotel. You have a lobby, you have staff that helping you, but you usually have a kitchen as well, which is usually part of the apartment. I think it's more hotel-y vibe there. Of course, it's a coastal town, it's seasonal, there are a lot of tourists in the summer, so it's only natural there will be more hotel-like accommodations there. In Tbilisi, it's more standard accommodations, standard flats. You can even find detached houses there, I guess. It's not so common, but you can easily find it. It's more like usual city apartment. In terms of climate, Tbilisi and Batumi quite different. Tbilisi summer, for example, it's really hot and it's really dry. There is almost no rain in there, and hence this is my worst nightmare because I hate this. When you're going out, you feel like you're entering sauna or something, and it's absolutely unbearable in summer there. In Batumi it's much easier because the climate is more humid, there's more wind, there's a little chill from the sea, so usually the temperature is not so high, and I enjoyed summer in Batumi much more. In Tbilisi it's extremely hot, and you can't even survive there if you don't have air conditioning in your place. But Batumi also have a downside in that sense because it's a lot of rain there, especially in autumn, spring and winter. There's constant raining. Basically the whole winter is just rain, and rain, maybe some snowy rain and stuff like this. In Tbilisi it's completely dry, so I think in terms of winter, Tbilisi is much more enjoyable place to be. The temperature is maybe a little bit lower than in Batumi, but because it's so dry, it's pretty nice to enjoy the winter. And they even have a nice snow sometimes. Well, of course, both of the cities located in Georgia, so the main language of both cities are Georgian. but there is still a little bit difference. I think in Batumi it has more Russian influence from the cities and from expats that coming there. There are a huge Russian-speaking community, a lot of cafes and restaurants opened by Ukrainians, Belarusians, people from Russia, and hence it's more Russian-speaking city. Even locals, I think, even young people, they speak quite good Russian. In Tbilisi it's a bit different. Of course, older generation also speak Russian and Georgian, but more young people, they better know English than Russian. In that sense, if you know English, it's probably going to be easier to get around in Tbilisi. And also in terms of finding friends and expats, I feel like most of the non-post-Soviet countries expats, they are all in Tbilisi. We have a big group there and people all around the world, and they all usually speak English, of course. In sense of cost of living, I think both cities are quite similar, except accommodation. A bit harder to talk about accommodation for me right now, because I left around 3 months ago from Georgia. There is a huge wave of people coming there because of the mobilization in Russia. Of course, I understand that accommodation prices are quite high now. I still feel like it's still a little bit expensive in Tbilisi, because it's a bigger city, because there are more locals that coming to work there, because there are more nicer areas, because Batumi is, well, pretty much the same around the city. Tbilisi has quite expensive areas and more cheaper areas, so there's more variation, more market, more movement in that sense, and I think the apartments are still a bit more expensive, except in the summer, because in summer everybody's going to Batumi for a season and the prices are quite high, but in the winter they going quite hard down, so it could be like 3-4 times in comparison to summer and winter. In that sense, you can plan your trip, spend some time in Tbilisi, spend some time in Batumi in winter, for example. But other than apartment, I think most of the prices are the same. Cafes and restaurants are a little bit cheaper in Batumi than in Tbilisi, but I didn't notice it, to be honest. I think it mostly depends on the place you're going to rather than city. In terms of convenience and infrastructure, cities are quite different as well. Batumi is quite small and it's flat, as I said. You can quite easily get around just by walking or using scooter or a short trip on a taxi. Tbilisi is much bigger, of course, but the public transportation in Tbilisi is much better than in Batumi. In Batumi there are a few buses, but I think expats aren't using them that much, mostly taxis and scooters. In Tbilisi, public transportation is quite good. There is a large subway network and also bus network. It's usually quite convenient to use them. The sense of like public transportation infrastructure at Tbilisi is much well designed and much well maintained. In terms of get around, depends on what you like, because in Batumi, of course, it's just easily to just walk where you need to go and not to take a bus or a taxi or a subway. Now let's talk about food. I think in both cities, of course, you can find Georgian food. It's no problem at all, but in Batumi there's some specific dishes that is related to Ajari region, especially the most famous Ajari and Hachipuri that looks like a boat. You've probably seen it in the pictures. And in Tbilisi it's like more general cuisine, because you can find all over the dishes from all over the regions. But in Batumi, Ajarian food, it's very best. You usually can find this high quality of Ajarian food in Tbilisi. In terms of more foreign cafes, of course, Tbilisi has more range, because just bigger city, more expats opening the restaurants. But in terms of coffee shops, for example, or coffee places, and some kind of bakeries, and maybe more Eastern European food, like Russian, Ukrainian food, Batumi is much better, because, as I said, there are more people from post-Soviet countries living there, and they opening restaurants as well. Maybe in Tbilisi it also exists, but it's more spread around the city. In Batumi, because it's quite small, you can just walk around the area and there's coffee shops there, and you can easily find your favorite one. Batumi, it also has better Turkish food, in my opinion, because, as I already said, there are Turkish community there, so they're opening restaurants as well, and you can much better find the Turkish food in Batumi. In terms of internet and connectivity, I think it's pretty much the same, especially mobile internet. I used Makti Telecom and it works not only in Batumi and Tbilisi pretty well, but all around the country. It works really good. Home internet, Maybe Tbilisi has more options, but I haven't noticed any problem in Batumi as well. There are sometimes some issues, but they could happen in both cities. In terms of water, electricity and other home issues, I noticed that in Batumi electricity and water shutdowns could happen quite often. Maybe I was unlucky, and in Tbilisi it could happen to you as well in different types of accommodation, but I noticed in Batumi we have quite a lot of power outages every month, or maybe even more often, and sometimes issues with the water. In Tbilisi we had issues with electricity, but not so often. But Batumi apartments could have issues with the mold, because as I said, it's quite humid, and I think it's common in cities that located near the sea. Mold is somewhere in your apartment, and ventilation quality is not so great sometimes. So of course depends on the apartment again, but yeah, we had these issues in Batumi as well. In Tbilisi, I can't recall these issues with the mold. In terms of traveling, I think it's quite similar, but I enjoyed traveling around Batumi a little bit more. I think it has more natural parks and places to hike, and also there's Svaneti, which is quite far, but still it's closer than going from Tbilisi, and I think Svaneti is one of the best regions in Georgia to experience. By the way, I have a video about my trip to Svaneti. If you haven't seen it, check it out by the link in the description. But from Tbilisi you of course can also find places to travel. Kakheti region, which is quite famous. There's a couple of ski resorts nearby the Batumi. There's Kazbegi. In general, traveling around Georgia is not an issue. If you're driving a car or even hire a driver, you can reach from anywhere, any point you want. So that's all the points of the ultimate battle, and you have to decide what city you prefer, and I shared all my knowledge with you. So let me know in the comments which city you prefer, Tbilisi in Batumi, and also check out my other videos. I have a video about cost of living in Tbilisi and also my weekly expenses in Batumi. Make sure to check them out. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and give me a thumbs up. It really helps to developing the channel. Bye bye, see you next time.